Hello everyone, my name is Ankon Ghosh and welcome to this new project that is we are going to build budget app using reactjs. As you can see inside our first slide, the vibe you can just recognize what we're going to make actually. So we are going to make a budget application using reactjs. Also we will use HTML CSS to make the user interface also, and inside this budget application we are going to use our expenses control, the progress control, and everything inside it we will going to introduce. Then how to get started with our project? So firstly, to get anything started with our React application, we have to make initialize the project firstly. So to do initialize, we have to make sure that node.js is installed in our system properly. So firstly, to check Node.js, I will also give you tutorial about how to check Node.js and also how to get initialize our npm, that is Node Package Manager modules or expo modules over here. Now the topics we will be discovering or exploring inside this project is that the use reducer hooks or custom hooks we will be creating using React.js. By this way you can just not only learn the hooks but you can use your custom hooks to make your own kind of responses or own kind of logic based hooks inside React application. So we are going to learn many things which will be included in this topic, and then inside the topics we will explore, we will also be tracking each project budget, and this each budget will have its own expenses. We are also going to track that expenses also. By this way we can just learn, not only learn the React hooks, but we can also know how to manipulate these hooks. And after that we're going to achieve this kind of result inside our application, where we can just not only add budget and expenses, we can just keep track of them. We can just visualize a maximize screen, or if a budget is maximized you can just see the progress bar is red, the background color is red, and everything and all we can just go through this lecture. Now without wasting any time, let's head towards our getting initialized to the project video and get started. So good luck to start with this project. This React app have everything all. It has some custom hooks to custom content to custom features and everything that we can build inside a budget application, and also some extra features we will going to show in this project. So without wasting any time, let's get started with our project initialization. So to initialize our project, we have to first make our project with npx create react app. That is the basic command to create a React project, and then we will have the project built inside our folder. That is, I have given my application name as budget app, and you can choose whatever name you want to have. Now I have opened it inside my code editor by typing code space dot, and it is blank as you can see, and we have our source public and everything. Now I will simply start the server by typing npm start over here. I will simply write npm and start, and it will start the server. Now as we have started our server, we will now head towards our styling our project. Now for the styling or the user interface, I will not go much deep inside the custom CSS or HTML elements. I will use React Bootstrap instead of that, which will be very easier for us to create those buttons and elements as I have shown you in the previous video. So this will be very easier, or it will make our work less and easier in use of Bootstrap. I recommend to get to know the basic of Bootstrap, so that as you have used in the HTML, it is very same as in the React.js also, but with some additional functionalities. I will show you what those additional functionalities are actually are there. And to start it with React Bootstrap, you have to simply go to your default browser and then search React Bootstrap and hit the enter, and it the first link you will receive is the React Bootstrap GitHub. So in the React Bootstrap you can go to the documentation to get the links. In our React documentation we don't have to read all the things about that. We just want a link to import our CSS inside our project. So we have to get started with our React project. So we have to get started with our React Bootstrap, and it will bring us to this installation page. As you can see, we have to run this command, that is npm install react bootstrap, and the current version, maybe the video you were watching much later while the data I am uploading, so the version may be changed in your case. So just simply install this command. So to install this, we have to simply copy and we have to paste inside our command prompt. Now as our server is already running, we have to close the server by pressing Ctrl C, and it will ask for terminate batch job or not. So I will press Y to yes, and I will paste the command, and it will start installing the bootstrap in our project. Now while installing in our project, I will simply clear all the unnecessary stuff from our project. As example, the src folder contains all many things we don't need all those, so I will simply delete. For example, I will delete setup test.js and report vitals, this logo. What we need is simply a index.js and the app.js. As we are using the bootstrap, so we will not in using any css file over here. It will make our work very easier and faster to code with this project. After deleting all the stubs, we are left with this index.js and app.js. So we have to delete some of the things inside index.js, as we have removed some folders and logos that are imported over here from previously. So we will simply remove this report vitals, and I will firstly increase the font size so that it will be easier to you to see. Now in this index.js, okay, I will close the left panel and I will remove this report vital thing, also the import statements for report vital over here. And we don't need any css, that is we don't need this index.css. I will remove this part, and I think we are good to go with this thing. Now I will save, and then I will go to app.js, and I will remove everything we don't need actually. So I will remove the whole div over here, and we are blank with this thing. Now we don't need this css or logo. Okay, so this our app.js component mainly consisting of. Now it must have something, that's why it is showing error. So we will just put a div for now, and we will further use the bootstrap to go with the css or go with the user interface. Now to use the css over here, we have to import the css command also. Now to importing components, you can scroll over the page over here in the browser globals, then example, and then comes the css. So this is the main import statement. I will copy this import statement, that is the css import statement, and I will go to our code editor and I will paste this import statement inside our index.js. As because this index.js is mainly rendering our app component into our default browser, so I will import the whole thing over here so that the css will be catchy to all our app component or everything inside our folders src. Now I will save the thing. Now bootstrap is successfully installed and imported in our project. Now I will just check once if it is the installation has completed. Okay, the installation has already completed. Now we can run our server again to test. After the installation of bootstrap, we have to use another dependency, that is uuid. And uuid is basically have a basic feature to create a unique id for our budgets. That is, as you have seen, the budgets or expenses we are creating, it is a mainly object or an array of objects, and each objects must have some unique ID so that we can differentiate one budgets to from another. So that's why we want to use a uuid dependency. And to use the uuid dependency, you just can google it for uuid npm, and you will get the command to install the npm uuid. So basically the command is very easy, that is npm uuid, or you can write npm install uuid if this command doesn't run in your system. Some low-end PCs don't support only writing the I, so you can use npm install uuid. I will simply copy this command and I will go to my command prompt and I will paste and hit enter to make it installation going on. Now till then I will show you I have clean all the things as I have told, and I have managed the index.js well. We have imported the bootstrap, and also we are going to install the UUID. Now now I will show how we can use the UUID later on as we go towards this project. For now, let's the UUID be installed, and I will come back to you, and then we can go to the initial step for building our project user interface. So let's head back to our next lecture, and there we will learn how can we get started with our user interface from scratch. Now that we have installed every dependencies we actually want to work on, that is bootstrap and UUID, now we want to start our server. Now I have write the npm start to start our server, and we are put with the servers, and the server has already started with the port 3000, and as you can see it is blank totally as we haven't passed anything inside our app.js. So I will simply minimize everything and I will go with the app.js. So inside app.js, if I pass any text over here, I will check if it is rendering in our browser or not. So I will give the browser a refresh so that the text I have passed inside our div component, it actually shows in the browser. Now the text is showing completely as we have given in our app.js in our browser. Now let's start our work with the bootstrap. Now for getting started with bootstrap, I will use a component named container in bootstrap. So I will give the container component over here inside our function app, and firstly we have to import the container, and so to do that I will give a import statement, and I will import container and from react bootstrap, or you can say the container from react bootstrap, and you have to give a slash and then container. This will import our container from the bootstrap. Okay, now we can try past any text inside it. For example, we are react developers. Now if I save this and check in our browser, now we can see the text. Now as you can see there is a very little gap from the upper side and from the left, and that is what the container is doing. That is, it has some pre-made margins, and I will think you cannot show, and I have zoomed a bit over here so that you can see the example clearly. Now I will bring it back to normal, then we can work with the bootstrap elements. Now I will pass a stack is also a bootstrap component, and this stack will contain the whole thing, and we have also need to import this stack. So to import the stack, we'll import it like this way, and this stack will be imported from again the react bootstrap only. So I will give a react then bootstrap. Now this stack will hold all the things, that is mainly the header part we are going to make. On the left side there will be the budget text, and the right side there will be two buttons, that is add expenses and add budget. Now for the first element inside our stack, we will have the h1 tag, that is the heading, and that heading will contain the budgets. Now these budgets also are going to have two buttons on the right side, and those button we can give the button component of react over here, and also you have to import the button again so we can use this, otherwise we will get a error in the browser. And we can get the button like, and I will give a self closing tag obviously, so that the button mainly, okay, sorry, the self closing tag will not be available here because we are going to pass the button title manually. So I will pass the add budget text, and then I will copy paste the button again, and I will remove it with expenses text. Now if I save, let's see what it renders in our browser. As you can see, it renders one h1 tag and two buttons. Now we have to apply the css over here. Now to apply the css, firstly we have to give the stack a class name, and the class name is will be normal bootstrap class name obviously. But before that we have to place the budget text and two buttons horizontally. So to do that, we will give the direction for the stack. We'll pass one properties, that is a direction, so that the contents get aligned horizontally, that is beside the budget text. So if I pass the horizontal over here and save it, and let's look what it renders in our browser. As you can see, the budget text and the two buttons are being aligned horizontally. Now we can see how can we manage the gaps between this. Now we can give the gaps like passing a value over here, and we can give the gaps, suppose you say 2, and this 2 will put a gap between all the components inside this. That is, you can see there is equal gap between budgets and add budget and then add expenses. Now we can give again a class name, that is the bootstrap class name, and the react obviously use class name rather than using class, and I will give the mb4, that is margin bottom will be 4, and for the button there will be some, that is you can see the first button will mainly be the primary button of bootstrap and second button will be outline button. So I will pass a variant will mainly hold what kind of button we want to show. So if I pass the variant is equals to primary, then it will be a primary button. If I say this as primary, also I will pass the variant inside add expenses. So I will just simply copy the variant over here and I will paste the variant, and I will say it will be as outline and primary. Then if I save and hit the browser, and we will see the changes inside the browser. That is, the second button is primary with outline, and the first button is add budget. Now we have to place a gap between this. Now the h1 must have some class name so that it gets aligned properly in the left always. So I will give it a class name as me auto, that is the margin ending will always be auto. I will show you what it will do actually. So if I pass this as auto and if I refresh, we'll wait for the browser to render our changes. And as you have seen, the shift text shifted towards the left. And if we increase this browser, so let me increase the browser size 1 second. And if we increase this browser size, you can see the budget is giving the margin to its ending as auto so that it will align properly. Now we are done with the budgets. Now we have to passes some classes in the container also, so that the gap from the top must be something, that is we have to give some margin for the container from the top basically. So I will give it a class name equals to mt4, or you can say merge my is actually in the y direction, so it will have four margin inside, and it will have four margin basically from top and bottom also. Now we are done with the first thing, that is our header. Now we will have to create our cards, budget cards. Now we can create the budget cards as component over here also. Now to create those budget cards, I will simply apply the custom CSS grid, as because the bootstrap CSS grid is not so good enough to proper or make our user interface proper in a layout or fix it in a layout. So I will simply use a custom grid CSS over here and I will place the component inside the budget card. Now let's see how can we make the budget cards from here. For the custom CSS grid, we will have to continue with the div mainly, and this div will contain all the contents inside our container mainly. So we have to place the div inside the container obviously, because the container is mainly holding the whole page. Now this div will have some initially styles. I will give the styles from here. That is, firstly the display should be grid, so I will type style equals to second bracket and then again a second bracket so that it can hold the properties as a common styling CSS properties. Now I will set the display as grid over here so that the display gets in grid, and then I will set the grid template columns so that the each cards will have some specific pixels of width or anything so that it can place automatically. So I will place grid template columns over here, and grid template columns will have a measurement, that is, if I say repeat, and this repeat will be autofill. Firstly, the first parameter will take as autofill, and the second parameter I will say min max. That min max will hold how much minimum or maximum value it can be, the size of the each budget card. So I will give it as 300 pixel mainly and 300 pixel with one FR of the boxes distances. Now I will close and then with a comma, and I will give the gap of the components or of each cards, the gap between them, as say 1.1 rem, and then I will give the align items as flex start. Now why I am giving the flex start, as because let's think of this as a card. So if the text, or let's think that this as a card, and if the text is the card components, it must be attached always to the top, that is the flex start. And if we given don't give the flex start, it all the text or all the boxes will not be in a proper layout. So you will make to know, or you will get to know what we are going to make after I render some components over here. So I will give align items as a flex and then start. Now we have some error, that is we haven't put the comma from before statement, and it is obviously unnecessary. And then we have to pass, and you can see we have nothing inside our browser render because we haven't passed anything yet. So to pass our component, I will make some custom component for the budget card, as because we have to render, we cannot hard code the thing but simultaneously, so that we have to make a component. I will give the component as a budget card component, and it will be obviously self-closing tag because the component mainly have a self-closing tag. Now the budget card is obviously not be defined, we'll get an error. Now we have to make a component folder inside our src. So I will make a component folder, and this will hold our first component, that is budget card dot js. Now get started with the budget card.js or the component. We can simply initialize our React project as typing RFC and control space, and I have installed a extension in the VS Code, that is known as React Native or reactjs snippets, or the ES7. You can install that extension to work with this simultaneously or fluently. I will press enter and it will give us a basic syntax of our React project. Now inside the budget cards we will go with the UI. Now we'll learn how can we make the components. So let's head towards our next lecture and learn how could we get started with our budget card component and render each card in our browser. Now inside our budget card.js or our card component, basically what we have to do, we have to use our bootstrap card again. So we don't have use of this react import statement, so I will get rid of this and I will simply remove the react from here and simply import the card component from bootstrap. So I will simply give a from and then from bootstrap obviously, and this card component have some card title, a progress bar we have to make inside our card components, and then a card buttons also. Now we have to get use of this card component. So to use the card component, we can just simply return it inside our statements, or that is the export statement, and we can use the card over here. Now this card must have some title. So to initialize this title, we will give the card dot title. And before giving the title, I forgot something, that is a body must be there, otherwise it will not work properly. So I will give the card dot body firstly, then it will hold a card title. So I will give the card dot title, and then we can pass our title from here. So the title firstly includes name, that is the name of the budget. So let's say I give the name of the budget as the React course over here. Now this React course will be the title of the card, and also it will have some the budget number, that is the expenses or the budget, actually the progress bar we are going to indicate, that is how much the maximum value or how much is the amount we are currently having. So to create that, we will again create a div, and we will pass our amount for say like now it is 20 out of 100. Now as you can see, we can divide this part from two, that is the second value will be a something variable name as max value or the maximum value, and the first value will be a the normal currency value, that is the amount we can say. Now I will just keep it a correct, then before slash I will give a normal variable name as amount. This amount will hold the, or we can pass the amount through this card container or the to this card component in budget card from app.js. And this React course will mainly hold the name of our course or the name of our budget. Now we will put a gap between these slash, and we are good to go with that. Let's save and let's watch what we can render inside our. Okay, it's giving us some error, that is the budget card is not defined. So we have to import the budget card firstly, otherwise it will not work properly. So to import the budget card, I will give the import statement over here, and then I will give the budget card. After that I will save our code, and let's see what we can render inside our browser. So it is giving us some must be some error over there, so that's why it is giving the blank. Let's see we have spelled it correctly. Okay, let's get the use, that is okay, the unexpected use of name amount. Oh, so there is a concept, or there is mainly the error is what I will show you. Now that is the thing that we can learn in this project, that is much more we are found the error, more we can learn. So we have to mainly pass those as a parameters or as an object over here, that is the properties or parameters. Now we will have some name, then amount, then also a max value. Now we can hit the save, and we can render everything in our browser. So as you can see, the cart component is now rendering only the slash, as because the name, amount and max is not defined yet. Now we can pass the name, amount and max from this component in our app.js. Now head back to the app.js file, and we can pass the name as, I will say, React course. Let's save it here and see if the component is rendering over here. Okay, it's rendering the React course over there. Now I will pass the amount as, say, let's say it is as 20, and then the maximum value I will send as 100. Now everything is showing here clearly. Now we are have to going to style the card properly so that it will render as we want it. Now before starting with the CSS or the styling of our card, let me teach you something, that is how could I give the currency number, or what I mean is that the currency symbol mainly. So to take the symbol, so it may be varies that some user are from another country and some from any another, so the currency may differs from that. So in that case I will make one file over here inside our src, and that I will name the file as util.js, and what this will contain is mainly the currency formatter. So I will give it a export statement, and this export will give export a mainly const, that is a variable, and this variable I will name as a currency formatter. Let's say the currency formatter. Now this currency formatter will mainly include the formatter functions over here. Now I will create a new intl, and this intl stands for the internationalization, and this intl stands for internationalization, and it will serve the main number formatter for us. So I will give intl dot the number formatter which it holds, give the number, and then the formatter number format, and this number format will take in some values as parameters. So firstly it will be undefined, that is this undefined is mainly means what is said, it will get your local. So as you can see the local there is defined as locals, that is if you are from US or India or any kind of country, it will get that value in this undefined, and this undefined will take some other parameter as an object. So that object will include the currency code. So I will give the currency here as INR, as I am from India now, and I will give the style of that currency as currency, so that it will give us the currency output, and then the minimum fraction digits. And what this actually stands for I will show you. Let me write the whole thing is that minimum fraction digit I will pass the 0. This is because if we don't pass it as 0, it will show us as 20 point, that is rupees 20.00, or you can say in US dollar or any kind of currency, it will give us the 0.00 in the ending. So we don't want that basically, that's why I'm passing 0. Now I will save that thing, and I have to import this currency formatter inside budget card. Inside budget card I will import the currency formatter. You can simply write over here currency and then the formatter. I will copy the currency format and I will give it an import statement over here, and from we can give util.js. Now we are getting an error as because we have given the file path as wrong. I will give it have to go to the out of the components, then only you can render. Now the currency formatter has been successfully imported. Now we have to use the currency formatter over here. Now here we have to now use the currency formatter. So how can I use that? We'll simply pass the currency formatter or the amount inside the currency formatter to work with. So I will give the currency formatter over here dot format, and this function will hold our amount, and it will give us the amount as the formatted currency. Now I will give the same for the maximum also. For the maximum I will set the currency formatter dot format, and it will hold the maximum value. It will give us as the maximum output or as a currency. Now we are getting some error. Let me check what it is. Okay, so the error is basically the currency formatter put statement. So we have to import as a function. So as we have exported, it will be in the braces. Now you can see we have our currency symbol over here. Now you can test it with, like, if I pass the USD over here, it will give us a dollar sign obviously, and if we pass the INR, it will give our INR sign. As you can see, the dollar sign have been rendered. Now I will control Z over here and keep it to default as INR. Now we have to give the styling for our card. To get started with the CSS for our card, now we have to give some class name in our card title. As because firstly, let me tell you that firstly we have to align all the contents for only the title in a horizontal position, in a horizontal way. So to do that, we will give a class name for our title only, and that class name will obviously be firstly the dflex, that is the display flex, that is a simple bootstrap class. Now while saving it, it will obviously align all the content in a horizontal way. After doing this, we will have to give the space between some contents. Now these contents, we have to give some space between them, and to do that we will give the class name as justify content space between, and for the same the bootstrap class name is the justify content between, and this will just simply give the space between our contents. As you can see, it has shifted to the each either end of the cart component. And then also we can give the css as for far better, is that the currency part will have one larger text and one smaller text. Sometimes some uppercase text may have some larger height also to do, or in some cases, in such cases we have to align everything in the same baseline. So to do so, I will align all the items as if I will align items as in baseline. So it will simply align our items into the baseline, and then the font weight, obviously the font weight must be a normal, and it is showing a very bold weight now. Now I will set it to a normal font weight. It will look nice then, and also a margin that is a MB3. So it will look nice in the end, that is the React card will look somehow a good. Now we are done with the first title interface, and then we have to give some margin for our name component or the name item. So we will give the class name for the name. Now the name class name, make sure you spell it well, or sometimes the class name cannot be catched or rendered if we give some wrong spelling for the class name. Now I will give a me2, that is the margin for on the ending of the name of the budget will be 2, and then it is up to this. Then the class name for the second thing is that the pricing will have some class name too, and the class name will include firstly the deflex, as because just imagine the screen size is so small and the react course name, that is a course, that is a budget name, may so large or so lengthy, that is it increase or touches our price, then there in that case there will be a me2 margin ending 2, and also in that case the price may be fall apart in the down case, that is the 20 and the slash 100 may fall down. So in that case we will do what is that we will give deflex for this class also, or this div also, and also it will also the have, and also it will have also align items to baseline. So I will simply copy this align item baseline over here in the deflex, and then we have some different problem, maybe we will be facing some different problem here, is that the second text have some font size small. So I will trigger the second thing, is that the first have some currency, so it I will kept it as it is. Now for the second I will put it in a spam tag so that I can give styling for this. So I will give a spam tag over here. It is a simple HTML tag. I hope you all are familiar with that. It is a simple HTML tag. I hope you are familiar with that. Now I will copy, I will cut this portion over here, and I will paste it inside our spam. Now let me format the document well. Now this spam will also have some class name. So I will just give the class name, and the first thing the class name will be as font size will be 6, that is the small. Let me render it in our browser and let's see what the changes we will notice. As you can see that default thing is 100 is a font size 6 and 20 is larger, as because that is the maximum value. And for some css or styling for this is that the text must be muted, that is it is somehow a low opacity text, as we have shown in our previous tutorial, that is in our ppt description demonstration. So I will give it a muted text class so that it will be a opacity less text, so I will give it as text muted, and then I will give a margin and I will a class of ms1. So we are done with this card thing. Now you can see this is a proper alignment for it and it is showing nice here. Now there is a progress bar. Now the next content we will be making is the progress bar for our card element. Now let's head towards our next lecture and we will learn how to make our progress bar with different progress colors and the maximum value reaching function also. That is, we will be handling that if the maximum value reaches, it will be red, and if minimum or 50% of the value reaches, it will be a yellow color, and if minimum value is reaches, then it will be a blue color. So let's head towards our next lecture. So the next section we're going to make is obviously the progress bar, and the progress bar have its own element in bootstrap. So we have to firstly import our progress bar from bootstrap only. So beside card I will simply write progress bar. After importing the progress bar we can simply give the components, but it will be inside our card body but after the title. Now here I can put the progress bar but with a self-closing tag, and it will hold some of the values, that is the class name and min max values, but we have to change the color according to the values of the maximum related to it. Now as we have imported our progress bar and I have kept the progress bar under the title and inside the card body, so let me save the page once and let's see if it is rendering in our page or our browser or not. So you can see the progress bar is now rendering here. Now let me give some style to it. So I will give it a class name firstly. Let me give it a class name. I want to make the corner a bit rounded because the pointed corner not look so much good for me. I will give it a class name as rounded and then fill. So this class is mainly it will round the corners. As you can see, the corner is being rounded and it's looking proper now. And also I will give it a function, that is we have to control, that is for suppose the maximum value is 100 over here as you can see, and the current value is 20. So as if it is 20 now, it should have a bit color, and then when it is 50%, that is it is if it is 50 it will have some another color, and if it is maximum full or it is exceed the maximum amount, it have some another color. So to control that thing we have to pass a function. That function will work is like that way, that I have to first pass the variant and this variant will include the function. So let me give it a function as named as get progress. So this get progress function is actually get the progress amount we want to take in, when to fill in. This will include two parameters, one is amount and the maximum value. So why I am passing the two variables over here, I will let you know. So let me create the function first, that is our get progress, and then I will explain the code later on after making the function here properly. Let me create a function and the function name will be get progress, and then obviously it will hold two parameters as I have passed the amount, and this amount is this 20 rupees, and the maximum and the other thing is the maximum. So the maximum is the 100. Now that's it. Now what we will do is that we have to check. So I will create a const and I will name it the ratio. Now what this ratio will actually do, it will firstly take the amount, and this amount will be divided by our max value. Here we will get average value or the actual calculation, that is that 20 will be divided by 100, so we will get the 2 by 10, that is 0.2, will get the fraction amount. And then we can give it a condition, that is if the ratio we have calculated is less than 0.5, that is if it is less than 50%, then it should return a class name. The class name will be primary, that is a blue color. And I will copy and paste the same thing. And if it is less than 70%, that is it is very less, then it will return the warning sign, that is the red sign. Now let me save it, but also I have to give it a default value, that is it also, if the both the condition does not satisfy, it will give or return as the danger class name. Now as it is okay, now we have to put this amount or this ratio to inside our progress bar so that it can show here. So for that we will pass some again props here, that is the mean. And as the progress bar is not showing anything, so we will pass props over here in our progress bar. So the first thing will be the mean, that will be notifying or that will be suggest the minimum value. So the minimum value will obviously be 0, that is if there is nothing, that will be 0. And the maximum value that the progress bar will hold is obviously the maximum value we are passing in it. And then the value is now, that is the progress, but what should be progress, it's now, that thing will be the amount we will get from the, that is the amount we'll get from the main component. So I will save it for now and let's see what it is rendering. So it is rendering the 20, as because the 20 is less than 0.5, so it will obviously give us the primary. Now if I, let's suppose if I change the 20 to a maximum value, so let's suppose if I change it to 200, the 200 is obviously max than 100, so it will give us a warning that is red. And if I give it as 50, it will be 50%, then it must give us the yellow and the progress is perfectly fine. Now this way the progress bar is actually working. Now we have to make our beneath section under the progress bar, that is two buttons over there. To make those buttons we will use again a stack screen over here. Now to use the stack screen, now let's come with the underneath section of the progress bar. So under the progress bar there is one screen or the one horizontal line, that is I will make it a stack screen, and that is including add expenses and view expenses buttons. So to make those, I will, let's create a stack screen over here, and that stack screen will include two buttons. So I will initialize two buttons over here and I will just copy paste these things. Okay, so now also we have to import, then I will import the buttons and stack over here, and I will import the stack and then buttons. Now we are fine with that. Now let me render once what it is showing, and I will give it a save. Then let's check if anything showing in our browser. Okay, it's showing an error, that is buttons is not okay, it's showing an error, that is the buttons are not defined. So that is because I have given buttons, it should be button. Let me change it and again save it. Let's see if it is showing our button. Now as you can see, it is showing the button, but there is no text inside. So I will say add expenses for this, and the second button will have view expenses. Let's save it again, and also we have to put it horizontally. So as we have done before, I will give the direction is equals to horizontal and then save it. And also we have to give a gap. I will give a gap of, let's suppose 2, and the class name will also be there so that we can align all the things and before align I have to give it a margin firstly so that it looks nice at least. So I will give the margin top as 4. That is, the gap will be aligned perfectly, so it is now looking good. Now we have to shift the two buttons to the very right. To do that we have to give class name in our buttons also, but firstly I will give the variant for the first button. That is, the variant for the first button will be outline with primary, and then for the second button the variant will be a gray color. So the variant will be outline but secondary over here. So let me save it and let's see how it is rendering over there. And for the first button I will give the a class name, that is ms auto. It will shift our whole thing inside the to the very right. So I will write the class name. Make sure you always write class name, don't write class. If you are familiar with HTML you will definitely make the mistake. That is, I also do, so make sure don't do that. And I will give at ms auto. This will shift the whole thing to the very right, and that is what we are completed with our card. And this is looking very fine actually, and I am very satisfied with seeing the result. And I hope you have come through this with a long, and I hope you have learned all the things perfectly and the same result you have achieved. And let us get through the next lesson where we will learn about rendering the components. Also we will learn one thing before rendering the components with a saving functionality. So what we are going to learn before that is that if the budget get maximized, that is red, the whole background of the budget card will also get red. So we will learn that thing in our next lecture also. As far we have made the progress bar, now I want to make the progress bar reddish color with the background with the less opacity. Now what I meant by that is that if the amount is maximum, then the maximum amount, that is for example the 2000, for say the maximum amount is 1000, and let's say I increase this 200 to, for say suppose 2000, then obviously the progress bar will be a red color. But then I also want the background of this whole card as a light reddish color. I will show you how it will look like. Let's say I will pass the amount as 2000, which will obviously exceed the maximum amount, and then as you can see the progress bar have reached the maximum level. Now let me give a class name to the card. Let's say the class name will be bg danger. So this means the reddish background. If I save it, you can see it will render a red background over here, but I want a light red background, so I will give a opacity. Okay, rather than 2 I have given a opacity of 10. Now I hope you can see what I want to make. Actually the result will look alike. Now this is what we want the result to be. Now to achieve our result, what we will do is that we have to set a condition, that is only when the value or the amount will greater than the maximum amount, then only it will pass this reddish color. But how could we do that? So to do that, what we will do is we will pass another props or properties or parameters over there. Let's say it is gray. So if we pass the gray, that means the card background will be a grayish color. So what I mean by grayish is that if I, let's say, give here bg light, it will be a grayish color. So till it's rendered, we will make a, as you can see after rendering the grayish color is appeared here. Now I want this result achieved, that is when the amount is minimum amount or less than our maximum, but when it exceeds or it is red in color, then it will be the background will red. Now simply to achieve the result, what we will do is that we will set a condition. So before setting a condition, I will initialize a variable. Let's say the variable name will be class name. Now it will hold a arrays of our class name. Now I will set the condition, that is, if our the amount we are passing is greater than our max value. So if the amount is obviously greater than max value, then only the red color will appear, and else if gray is passed, that means the card will be gray. So inside this statement we will give our statement for we will return our class names, and we will push it to our class name array. Now this is the simple logic we are going to work on. Now I will give here the class name array dot push, and it will push the class name as bg danger and also bg opacity with 10. Now this will, if there the maximum value is less than the amount, then it will push this class name over here, and we will pass this class name inside our card. And else if we pass the gray parameter, then it will do the same thing, but it will pass only one class name. So I will paste it over here, and I will just simply write light. Now how we will pass this class name over here? So inside this class name I will simply delete the string, and I will give class name, that is the name of the array, and dot join, that is it will join each element of the array but with a space in it. So by this way it will join. Now we haven't passed the gray yet, but you can see the red color has appeared as because it is maximized now. But let's suppose we will give the amount less, let's say 200, then okay, the amount is in decreased but the reddish color haven't gone. That is because we have passed the amount as a string, so we have to pass it as a numeric value. So put it this like way, it will then pass as a numeric value, as because it is in string, so it will get the character value. So obviously the smaller the string, the larger the value will be. Now if I pass it as a numeric string, it will, you can see it is have a transparent color and the reddish is gone. Now I will pass the gray over here. So as I have passed, the gray has rendered in our right side of our browser. Now this is what we wanted to achieve, that is it will work as we flow. Now if I, so let's suppose say maximize the value, it will be, the progress bar will be red and the background color will be also red. Now we have simply done that. Now head over to the next lecture and we'll learn the next step for our code. Now we have pretty much done with the user interface of the application, but the application what mainly means is that we can use or read or usable components, that is we can click on the buttons and it will give us a Moodle as we have seen in the introduction for that, and we can delete or add expenses, add budgets also. So to make all this thing functional, we have to use the context of the reactjs. Now to use the context, firstly I will create a folder over here as name as context. So I will create a folder in the src and I will name it as context, and inside the context I will create a file that is budget context. Let's say I will use the budget context .js, and this will help us for our managing the application, that is the all regular functions, adding expenses, viewing expenses, adding budgets and deleting budgets, deleting expenses, all those things. Now inside this budget context we will use some context of the React. So to use that, firstly we'll export a function. This use budget function mainly hold our return statement only, that will return the context of this whole page, that is this file of budget context. Now inside this function we will simply give a return statement and this return will basically return our context. Now I will use the use context hooks from React, and this use context hook will mainly return a budget context. So to return a budget context, I will simply, and as you can see, I have auto imported the use context, and I have to import the React over here also. I will import the React, and I will create a constant, and this constant will, I will give the name as budget context, and this will basically hold the React create context hook. So I will give the React dot create context. This will create our mainly context, and this will be using for our adding expenses, adding budgets, and deleting all the functions. Now we will simply pause this budget, and I have a mistake here. I will just simply copy this budget context and I will pass it through our use context. Now we have made the use budget hook over here. Now the main functionally that will hold every process over here, I will make that thing, that is I will export another constant, and that constant I will give a name as budget provider. So if you are familiar with these hooks, and you will might know that if we use the provider, it will mainly wrap the whole app.js or application inside it, and it will pass the values globally or the functions globally. So I will give the budget provider over here, and that budget provider will basically be a function. I will give a fat arrow function over here, and it will simply return the children's, and I will simply return the children. Children mean anything inside this provider will simply return all the things. Now how will use this? So I will firstly import the budget context over here. So I will give a import statement, and it will be within a function, and I will import the budget provider, obviously that will hold all the things for us. I will wrap the whole application inside the budget provider, and if I import this from here, and I have to give the specify the path also. Sometimes it will take automatically the path. Now I will give the context folder, and then I will give the budget context. Now obviously check that if you have spelled correctly your file name, else we will get an error. Now I will use the budget provider, and I will make a tag for it. Will paste the budget provider, and I will enwrap the app.js or app inside this budget provider. Now it will basically hold all the values passing through our budget provider inside our application. Now we will check if there is any error. So it will doesn't change anything. Okay, so we have an error expected an assignment or functional call instead of an expression. Children is not defined basically. So for that we haven't written. Okay, so I haven't given a return statement, that's why we are facing the error. So I will just render it, and okay, so the children is not defined, it is showing because we haven't passed it inside here. I will pass it as an object, then I will save it. Let's see if there is an error we are showing or not. Now all the functions to start with, we will just start our syntax over here, and we will initialize our budgets context dot provider, and this provider will all as a value will this provider will hold a value, and that value I will pass over here. I will give the values, as the value will hold the functions, and the values will be obviously our object, and that objects, let's say the function are all the budgets we will get from here, and then all the expenses we will get from here, After that we will have a function named get budgets expenses, that is the expenses of each budgets, and then we will have the add expenses function, and then we will have a add budget function. So all the function will then announce or will then make, but before that we are just arranging the components or the functions we will globally be achieving. Then delete budget, and then delete expense. Now these are all the functions we are going to get over here in this whole provider. Now we will pass the children inside our provider. So I will pass the children over here, and by this way our budget context will actually work. Now the budget context is showing that it is not defined. That's because I haven't passed it over here, the s. Now you should have passed the same thing from this budget context as this. Now we will not get any error. I will save the thing. Now obviously these are not defines yet, so we will get the error for that is undefined of these things. Now we will firstly define all the functions. Now previously we were getting the error as because I haven't mentioned the s over here. Make sure you edit this budget context at budgets context, as we have passed this inside our context, also inside our provider. Now firstly I will have to initialize this function, so I will make a constant over here named as budgets, and this will be empty array initially. Also we will have our context an array for the expenses and the all the things will have in the form of functions. So I will paste all the things over here, and I will, so there is a simple way to just get rid of all the functions, is that you can click alt and give here, and then I will write them as function, and then at the end I can simply make it right this. So okay, so we have got the functions. Now we have to make the code over here, that what this will actually do. Now for the constant budgets and expenses we will use the use state over here. So firstly I will import the use state. After the use context I will use the use state over here, and then we will make it as use state. So to use the use state we'll write it as a blank array initially, and the same thing for expenses also, but we have to use this use state functions over here. So I will wrap it inside our third bracket, and then I will use one function that is set budgets, and the same thing goes for expenses also. I will wrap inside the third bracket, and I will give a function to manage the expenses. It is set expenses. Now we are good with that. Now we'll use all the things. Now if I save, we will obviously get error because all the things are even not defined yet. So I will just define it, then we can go with the models and all the things. Now we can use these two states, that is budgets and expenses, to manage our functions. For example, for the get budget expenses we will have to pass a budget id over here so that we can get a specific budget id. Now how these things will actually look like, I will give you a sample over here. The budget will hold object of id, and then name, also max value we will have to pass for it, and the object for our expenses will look like, it will obviously have a id, budget id, which I have passed inside, and then amount we will having, and then the description of that expenses, that is a demo description for now, let's say, and this will mainly hold, this is the format of our budget and our expenses. Now to get the expenses, I will just simply pass the budget ID, and what this function will work is like I will return our expenses we want to get for the specific budget ID. This is where actually if we click on the view expenses, so I will pass the ID of this React course and I will have to filter of the all the expenses. Then I will just take the expenses and then filter through it. And then how I will filter is that I will get each item as expenses, and then I will run a function inside this, and this function will provide me expenses dot budget ID. The budget ID at each expenses is holding that, and it will be, if it will be equal to the budget ID I am passing, then it will return me that expense only. So what this function is actually doing is that firstly I am passing the budget ID, and if the budget ID matches the React course any of the expenses, it will return us that expenses or that all the expenses of that budget only. So this is what the function actually mean. And if I think I have done something wrong, so I will just clear the spellings and all the budget ID naming convention over here. Now for adding a budget or expenses, we have to firstly get through the ID, that is we'll generate a unique ID for that. For now here it comes place the UUID library for us. So I will import the UUID library, and I will say like v4 as I will import v4 as UUID v4, and this will import all the thing from UUID. Now for adding the budget, what we can do is that we have to simplify the function. Now inside our add budget function, I will make the function as firstly I will call the set budget, that is this will be used to update our state. So firstly I will update the state, that is with using set budgets, and this function firstly will hold the previous budgets which is previously available inside the array. So I will get the prev budgets, that is the previous budgets, it will denotes to. Now this previous budgets will work as a parameter, and then I will just push, or I have to return the array with previous budgets and the new one we are updating with it. Now by this we can just concatenate the previous budgets. Now I will just add the previous budgets over here, and with a new object which will hold an ID with the name key as ID, and this ID will obviously I will use the UUID library we have used over here. So I will use UUID v4, and that will work as a function which will generate a new unique ID for us, and then a name, and then a max value, that is we are obviously passing with the functions parameter. And then this, by this we will have the budgets created. But what if two budgets have the same name? So we have to check there. So I will apply one condition to check if the two budgets have same name, it will do something else. So to work with that function, we will set the logic, that is if our previous budgets, that is what we are actually doing. So we have to set the condition inside our set budgets only.